Chapter 776. Jing Nanzi descends. A bolt of red lightning crackled in the sky with a roar. Jing Nanzi opened his eyes, though just a crack. A sharp, freezing glare shone through that crack, along with a faint hint of surprise. One of the spies I left in the world outside is summoning me. Jing Nanzi slowly lifted his right hand and formed several seals before himself, as if he was calculating something. As he continued calculating with his fingers, the thunder in the sky that was raining blood instantly grew louder. The numerous booms practically fused into one as lightning crackled in the sky, causing the shades of red on the ground to shift violently between light and dark, as if the apocalypse had arrived. The speed at which Jing Nanzi formed the seals with his right hand increased. Wisps of green smoke appeared faintly on the tip of his right hand's fingers. Barely discernible illusions could be seen in that smoke, and if anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see that Qian Lin, Long Li, Sun Kuan, and Su Ming's forms had appeared in the green smoke. Once that happened, the green wisps of smoke showed the sealed region in Crimson Flame Planet. At that moment, when the thunderous booms in the sky reached their most intense volume, Jing Nanzi's expression changed drastically. Disbelief first appeared on his face, then he swiftly stood up. As he gradually extracted and read through all of the memories contained in Yi Shentong's clone before it had died, Jing Nanzi stood on the mountain, and a variety of emotions constantly flickered on his face. He seemed to be hesitating about something. After a long while, a resolute expression appeared on his face. A hint of ferociousness and ecstasy even flashed past his eyes. If I manage to do this great meritorious deed on my own, then I will be able to end my period of keeping a lookout over this place early. I will even be able to obtain 100, 1,000, or maybe even a 10,000-fold increase in resources that would have originally been given to me. This is definitely an anomaly in the planet. If I can suppress it on my own, then I'll be able to obtain the greatest reward among the union of the 4 great true realms. I will obtain the right to enter Heavenly Sun Planet and train. There was excitement that Jing Nanzi could not suppress shining in his eyes. Heavenly Sun Planet is only opened once every 100,000 years, and less than 30 people can enter the place every single time it is opened. It is the sacred cultivation land who can be entered by those whose names appeared on the list the leaders of the 4 great true realms decide upon. The time when the planet will be opened again is no longer far away. If I can obtain the right to enter this time, then I'm 7/10 confident that once I come out, I'll be half a step away from Solar Kalpa. Jing Nanzi no longer had any hesitation. With his right hand, he seized the air in the direction of the red armor, which was lying on the ground, drenched by the bloody rain. The armor instantly flew up and separated into several parts that covered Jing Nanzi's entire body, pieces connecting with each other to once again turn into a red battle armor. Jing Nanzi looked filled with murderous aura when he equipped that battle armor. As his long crimson hair danced in the bloody rain, he picked up the helmet. Once he put it on, he turned around and took a step off the blood-red mountain. Boom! The mountain shattered into pieces. An array of red light flew out from the collapsed ruins. That light contained a rectangular object that looked like a coffin and was crimson in color. There were streams of light shining on it, as well as countless bumps formed by runic symbols. Anyone who saw these items would feel their hearts and souls trembling. Jing Nanzi took a step towards the crimson coffin. When he touched it, he fused into it. Immediately, a large amount of the runic symbols began sparkling, and the coffin turned into a ray of piercing light that charged into the sky with a bang, at a speed that was difficult to describe with words. With the bloody rain falling on it, the coffin flew out of the cultivation planet in the blink of an eye. Then, in the form of a long arc, it charged towards the direction where Crimson Flame Planet lay in the vast galaxy. Days passed. The people in the seal within Crimson Flame Planet remained still and unmoving, immersed in the condition that fell upon them due to the power of the World Stone. There was a dazed expression on Su Ming's face. No one knew what he had seen in the ripple from the World Stone. The bald crane was drooling as it mumbled in its spot, muttering words that perhaps even the crane itself would not be able to hear clearly. At that moment, Crimson Flame Planet was dark. Most of the people would not venture out and do anything. After all, the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet had walked out of their sealed regions, and everything had become different from how it was in the past. For the cultivators in the place, the caution they had exercised during the past few years became the barrier that would ensure their safety. The night was not quiet, though. The ferocious beasts would roar out occasionally, their voices slicing through the night sky and traveling in all directions. The old woman in the house at the top of the mountain in the eastern region of Crimson Flame Planet was sitting inside with her legs crossed. She had seldom ventured out during the past few years, because her heart had been slightly uneasy all this while, but in the end, she could only turn her unease into sighs. On this night, as the old woman was sitting in her house and meditating, her eyes suddenly flew open, and a hint of shock appeared within them. The entire night sky of Crimson Flame Planet turned red at that instant. All the cultivators on the ground woke up and lifted their heads at the same time to look at the sky in shock. In fact, even the roaring ferocious beasts abruptly stopped letting out any sort of sound. The thing that had caused the sky of Crimson Flame Planet to turn red was a piercing ray of red light. Its manifestation in the sky was a telling sign that something was approaching this place at an extreme speed. At that moment, it was moving through the layer of air at the highest point in the sky. The red light was too fast for anyone to see what was inside. In the blink of an eye, it was as if the sky had been put on fire. Moments later, the light crashed onto the ground, and with the collision spot as its center, a wave of impact that was like a violent gust swept through the entire area. Wherever this wave of impact went, the ground would be instantly eroded. There were even several volcanoes that turned instantaneously into dirt. All manner of living except for those who had reached the peak of Heaven Cultivation Realm within a circular area of 10,000 lees died in an instant, without even being able to let out a single scream of pain. However, even those who had reached the peak of Heaven Cultivation Realm coughed up a huge mouthful of blood due to the wave of impact and were all gravely wounded by it. Once the booming sound that came from the wave of impact faded away, a gigantic red coffin could be seen on the spot where the wave of impact had originated, which was also where the red light had crashed onto the ground. Nearly a third of it had penetrated into the ground in a diagonal manner. A human face popped up on the surface of the coffin's lid as the countless bumps that were runic symbols shone and streams of light flowed out from the coffin. More accurately speaking, the thing that showed up was not a face but a head wearing a helmet. Gradually, Jing Nanzi's head and body showed up on the coffin's lid before he eventually walked out, as if he had just phased through it. As he looked at the ground around him, he let out a cold harumph. The murderous aura about him surged into the sky, and he lifted his right hand to strike the coffin. The runic symbols immediately shone intensely, and the coffin turned into a long red spear, which Jing Nanzi picked up. At the instant he held the blood-red spear, a power that belonged to those in the peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm was released from his body without him bothering to put even a single bit of disguise on it. At the instant it erupted from his body and swept through Crimson Flame Planet, it told all the people in the area that he had arrived. Jing Nanzi lifted his left hand, and a jade slip appeared on his palm. When he squeezed it, green light immediately spread out and covered the land beneath his feet. It traveled so quickly that in the span of 10 breaths, that green light had already covered all the land, all the cultivators, and all the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet. It even seeped into the depths of the ground and covered the sealed region. Once it did so, an illusory projection of several dozens of feet lit up on the jade slip. That projection showed a complete Crimson Flame Planet. This scene was almost identical to what the ancient bronze sword had manifested in the air when the True Guard were investigating the region. As the green light covered all the living beings in Crimson Flame Planet, it made all the cultivators in the land know clearly that a True Guard had descended. The old woman in the house on the mountain in the eastern region was shivering at that moment. Her face was stark pale as panic revealed itself in her features. The ripple of power she sent out also showed a submissive gesture. Jing Nanzi cast a look at the illusory projection before he disappeared without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already at the gigantic crack where Su Ming and the others had lingered for some time in the past. Jing Nanzi charged in along it. At this instant, the ripples of power and the mighty pressure of Jing Nanzi caused the bodies of the people in the seal to experience tremors of different degrees, as they were immersed in the strange state caused by the World Stone. A violent shudder wrecked Su Ming's body as he remained seated. A hint of struggle appeared in his dazed and lifeless eyes. A brilliant glare shone within them, and he seemed to have snapped awake at that instant. Rarely seen shock appeared on his face. What is this power? It's comparable to the undying and imperishable world. It actually immersed me within itself that I almost couldn't free myself from it. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. Sweat broke out on his forehead, and the stones around him loosened by a large margin. At the instant Su Ming stood up, the stones in the area turned into ashes. The barrier of 10 feet between him and the area of the world stone also disappeared before Su Ming's eyes. It allowed him to see the area that was 10 feet away from him. He saw Long Li shuddering in the diamond-shaped screen of light, along with the 9 flags and the 9-headed, green-faced Kirin, as well as a stone shining with a brilliant light as it remained inside a floating screen of light. At the instant Su Ming saw the stone, a bang rang out in his head, and the dazed state he was previously in threatened to overtake him again. If Su Ming had not immediately bit his tongue, he might have lost himself again. He sucked in a sharp breath and no longer looked at the stone. However, he knew clearly that the stone had been the reason for his unconsciousness. Judging by how Long Li had set up a rune to fend it off, it was clear that he had been prepared for it since the start. If Su Ming was to make a guess based on this, then there was a high chance that everything had happened by Long Li's deliberate actions. What is this thing? How could it possess such shocking power? A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He did not look at the stone, but at an ancient scroll placed before Long Li. At that instant, a muffled boom suddenly came from the distance. Once it rang out, a terrifying presence that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble violently spread out to cover the whole area. This presence was incredibly domineering, and even though Su Ming was unfamiliar with it, the feeling it gave off made him think of the time when the true guards had come to patrol and sent their divine sense to sweep through the planet all those years ago. Su Ming's pupils shrank. He saw a layer of green light phasing through the stone walls around him, and it was rapidly spreading and filling the area. He was not unfamiliar with this sight. This was something he'd seen when the true guards had come in the past. A true guard has arrived. Su Ming immediately remembered the conversation shared between Qianlin and Yi Shentong. He then longer hesitated and moved. But just as he was about to leave so that he would not be covered by the green light, he cast a glance at the ancient scroll before Long Li, and his footsteps came to a halt. Chapter 777. Plot for Murder. This ancient scroll is clearly very important to Long Li, since he placed it in front of him. I wonder if it's an enchanted treasure or it contains some other secrets inside it. A thought bloomed in Su Ming's heart, but he soon forced down the decision to wake up the bald crane and have it retrieve the ancient scroll. This was not a very intelligent move, and it was also incredibly risky. Besides, there were many strange changes in the sealed region at that moment, and time was short. The true guard's powerful presence was swiftly closing in from a distance, and the green light was about to reach him. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he turned around resolutely. With a single move, he arrived beside the unconscious bald crane. Once he grabbed it, he placed it in his storage bag and started charging through the stone wall. What happened here? How could a true guard descend to this place? Could it be that it has been several years since I fell unconscious and the true guards from the galaxy beyond Crimson Flame Planet have once again began their patrol? If that isn't the case, then Qianlin must have kicked his plan into motion. Su Ming was moving forward with his physical power through the stone wall, but before he could travel too far ahead, a violent bang came from behind him, the area where the world stone was. In the mid of that bang, Su Ming heard Long Li's low roars. At that moment, a voice that could cause an endless chill to creep up a person's heart and have them find a bloody stench wafting into their nose reverberated in the air. An unlawful ant. Su Ming's heart shuddered. As his pupils shrank, he increased his speed as he rushed forward. He could sense that Long Li was fleeing rapidly in the tunnel behind him, and there was a terrifying presence chasing after him at a relaxed pace. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. As he circulated his cultivation, he became even more cautious. However, before even an hour went past, another muffled but just as violent boom came from the sealed region. The spot where the booming sound came from was not too far from Su Ming. Qianlin's word rang through the area. Sun Quan, Su Ming, if the two of you are still hiding here, then you will surely die. Come out and fight with us to kill the true guard. There was a shrill, hoarse tone to Qianlin's voice. Clearly, the booming sound just then had caused grave injuries to him. Fellow Daoi's son, fellow Daoi's Su, this true guard is in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, so no matter how well the two of you hide, it'll still be difficult for you to escape death. Why don't you come out and work together with us to fight against him?" There was a feebleness to Long Li's voice as it echoed through the tunnels. "Oh. Sun Quan, Su Ming. So there are 4 people alive? But I only detected 3 people's lights. Interesting. Could it be that there is someone who isn't recorded in the barren lands of Divine Essence's records besides those from the alien races?" Jing Nanzi wondered, his cold voice echoing through the tunnels. Booming sounds continued reverberating in the air for the next couple moments. The muffled roars, the clashing of arts, and piercing sounds might be coming from a distance, but when those sounds fell into Su Ming's ears as he continued charging forward, he could imagine just how brutal the fight was. Su Ming knew clearly that this fight was not something that he could easily join. At that moment, as he charged forward, he no longer headed to the depths of the sealed region, but instead moved swiftly towards the entrance. When Su Ming was fleeing outwards, Sun Quan, who was at the core of the sealed region, had a variety of emotions flickering on his face. He could hear the booming sounds and roars in well enough. At that moment, he gritted his teeth and stood up, then charged into one of the tunnels by his side. His body instantly fell into a semi-transparent state. Damn it, they actually said my name. Even if I run away from this place, I'll still be chased down. So if I don't want to be a wanted criminal that won't know peace, I have to fight. It was not that Sun Quan had never thought about running before, but his kinsmen bearing his family name were on the cultivation planet where he stayed. If he truly became a wanted criminal, then his kinsmen would definitely become the first people to be brutally slaughtered. Sun Quan disappeared into the tunnel and charged towards the spot where the booming sounds were coming from. At that moment, Su Ming was already very close to the entrance. He had even arrived at the spot where the endless dead red threads were located, which they had stepped through when they had entered the sealed region. Yet right at the moment Su Ming arrived, his footsteps froze. Sitting and meditating before him was a man with long, red hair. That man was just sitting there calmly, having placed his helmet by the side to reveal a callous face. His long and narrow eyes might have been closed, but he gave Su Ming the impression that he was facing off against an ancient, ferocious beast. "So you're the person whose bloodline isn't registered on the records?" When speaking with that cold voice of his, the red-haired man slowly opened his eyes. The instant he did so, a ray of red light that looked like blood filled the air. Su Ming had not noticed him. His Artman had not detected this person's presence at all just now. However, the presence about him was the exact same as the one he sensed on the True Guard just now. However, Qian Lin and the others were fighting against the True Guard right then, so the person before him had to be a clone or a nascent divinity. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He moved back without any hesitation, looking as if he was about to retreat and avoid the True Guard. His actions matched what the red-haired man judged he would do. "You're just a mere cultivator in Earth Cultivation Realm. What a waste for me to leave my clone here." The red-haired man shook his head, then lifted his right hand to casually point towards Su Ming. Bang! Su Ming coughed up blood and his entire body immediately wilted. He looked as if he had suffered grave injuries. His right arm swept through the air before him, and he started falling backwards like a kite with a torn string. However, the red-haired man did not notice that when Su Ming swung his arm before him, a shadow had flown out of his sleeve and stung the air fiercely. The shadow was the poisonous wasp, but the spot it had stung was empty. There was only air there. Weaker than an ant. The red-haired man stood up and picked up the helmet before he took a step towards Su Ming. When he was in mid-air, he lifted his left hand once again. This time, he had his fingers pressed together to form a straight line before striking the air in the direction of the retreating Su Ming. At that instant, however, a freezing glare began to shine in the eyes of Su Ming, who had blood trickling out of the corners of his mouth and whose body was falling backwards. He stared at the spot where the red-haired man was, and the wilted look on his face instantly disappeared, replaced by killing intent. He lifted his right hand with his palm facing upwards and the back of his hand facing downwards. He repeated this action several times, and Destiny's power swiftly filled his body. His divine ability to change the flow of time was activated at that moment. However, he did not use it on the red-haired man. Instead, he used it on himself. Because of that, the red-haired man continued moving forward, but Su Ming's retreating body looked as if time had reversed for it. His act of moving backwards turned into him charging forward, and since the power of time was contained in that burst of speed, it momentarily stunned even the red-haired man. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming appeared before the red-haired man. This was not Su Ming himself charging forward, but the action of moving backwards being turned into a forward charge because time had been reversed. Perhaps more accurately speaking, he had returned to a spot he'd been at a certain point of time. At that time, Su Ming had forced himself to cough up blood. Using blood as a disguise, he had swung his arm, and the poisonous wasp had flown out from his sleeve to sting the empty space beside him. At that moment, as time had reversed on Su Ming, the same thing occurred to his wasp. Now, the wasp had appeared beside Su Ming, and also right next to the red-haired man who had moved forward just now to chase after Su Ming. A sharp needle appeared on the wasp's stinger. That needle shone with a strange light as it pierced forward. However, while the wasp had indeed stung air in the beginning, now, the red-haired man was in that spot. It was as if both parties had calculated and planned for precisely this to happen. The poisonous wasp's needle swiftly stabbed into the red-haired man's right arm. The act of using Destiny's art to change his own time instead of another person's was a show that Su Ming's use of Destiny's power had become vastly different from before. He had become even more adept in using this art. In fact, he even gave off the feeling that he was using it with ease. "You're just a mere clone. How dare you even think about killing me?" Su Ming laughed coldly. Everything he had done previously was for the poisonous wasp to sting the red-haired man. He knew clearly just how frightening the wasp's poison was, but no matter how strong the poison was, if it did not enter his enemy's body, it would be useless. Su Ming did not have the confidence that the poisonous wasp would be able to outsmart this clone, whose real self was a true god whose divine sense and level of cultivation far surpassed Qian Lin and the others. That was why, to ensure that everything would go according to plan, he spared no pains in faking his retreat and coughing up blood to arrange this setup within an incredibly short amount of time. At that moment, as the red-haired man shook violently, he let out a shrill roar. His right arm instantly melted, and the decay was rapidly spreading upwards. In the blink of an eye, his legs also began corroding. "What is this poison?" The red-haired man's expression changed drastically. He could not spare any attention to kill Su Ming. Instead, he tried to return to where his real self was at the fastest speed he could muster. Only then was there a possibility for him to keep his body of a clone around. Running away. A ruthless glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. However, he knew that even though his opponent was a clone, he was still a true god with power that belonged to a lord of a world plane. Fear had only appeared in him because of the poison. If he used his power of the world plane, it would be difficult for Su Ming to put up a fight. It was especially so for that single attack he'd used just then. If Su Ming had not used his physical body and cultivation to simultaneously resist it while also having the 5-direction seal in his body acting as a cushion, it would have been incredibly difficult for him to resist it. Without any hesitation, Su Ming seized something in his bosom with his right hand. He brought out a gourd, and it instantly opened an eye to stare at the red-haired man that was charging into the distance. Almost at the instant the eye on the gourd locked onto Jing Nanzi's clone, the clone's heart shuddered, as if his soul had been marked. Su Ming's cold voice then reached his ears. "Treasured gourd, please kill him." Chapter 778. Destroy the clone. "Treasured gourd, please kill him." At the instant Su Ming said these simple words, the eye on the gourd that was staring at the red-haired man blinked, and a wisp of green fog immediately drifted out of the gourd. A presence that made Su Ming's heart tremble instantly erupted. He saw an incredibly adorable doll appear in the fog as it erupted. That doll was the size of a palm, and there was an even smaller sword in its hand. The doll rose into the air as it rode on the green fog, then with a shocking speed that not even Su Ming could see clearly, it arrived beside the red-haired man in the distance in the blink of an eye. Once it circled around him once, the green fog became much duller and swiftly returned to the gourd. All of this happened at an incredibly fast pace. Only about 2 or 3 breaths passed in the time the doll appeared to the moment it disappeared. By then, the red-haired man's body in the distance had already shattered. His head was completely detached from his body, before he could even have the chance to retaliate. The poison in him reduced his body to a puddle of water, and his soul as well as his nascent divinity were destroyed by the gourd. Su Ming sucked in a sharp breath. He might have had a high approximation of the gourd's power, but at that moment, he realized that he had still underestimated it. He did not expect that it would possess such a terrifying might. Perhaps it wouldn't be so shocking if I had used the gourd on its own. This might have happened because the red-haired true guard was also poisoned by my wasp. Su Ming calmed his heart and analyzed the situation rationally. At this moment, a furious roar came from the sealed region. As it reverberated in the air, Long Li, Qian Lin, and Sun Kuan's bitter, weakened harumphs could be heard mixed within it. Su Ming, you're Su Ming. How dare you kill my clone? No matter where you are, I, Jing Nanzi, will kill you. Su Ming remained as calm as ever. He turned around and ignored Jing Nanzi's roars. At that moment, the clone was no longer blocking his path. It would not be difficult for him to leave this place. Not only will I kill you, I will also slaughter all your people and all your kin. Jing Nanzi's voice was still echoing madly in the air. The rumbling was growing more intense, and it sounded as if the fight was getting closer to this place. Su Ming stopped moving. However, the reason for his pause was not the endless red threads that had gathered for an unknown reason at the exit before him. Judging by the looks, these red threads were the objects that had went after Su Ming and the others' lives previously. They had gathered in this place for some unknown reason. At the instant Su Ming was about to exit the place, he immediately sensed a boundless sea of red with his Artman. Yet this was not the reason behind Su Ming not taking that step forward but freezing up instead. What made Su Ming's feet stop was Jing Nanzi mentioning that he would slaughter his people. Slaughter my people. What familiar words. Someone had once said the same thing to me, but he died in the end. I do have a huge aversion towards people saying those words, Su Ming muttered softly. Not only will I kill your people, I will find your sect and destroy it. Only then will your crime of killing my clone be pardoned. Jing Nanzi's voice was getting closer, and a mighty, frightening power spread over along with his voice. Su Ming no longer moved forward. Instead, killing intent shone in his eyes, and he turned around to cast a glance at the sealed region. Slaughter my people and destroy my clan. Since I cannot leave this place soon, then I might as well try, and kill you. Su Ming let out a cold harumph and moved back swiftly, appearing right at the entrance. Once he let his presence outwards, the red threads that had been moving in and out of the entrance, not noticing Su Ming, instantly let out shrill whistles and charged straight at him. All of the red threads then swiftly started to move. In the blink of an eye, a boundless sea of them packed closely together came crashing towards Su Ming, as if a tidal wave had surged up and was charging over. Su Ming turned around and dashed back into the sealed region like a bolt of lightning. The vast sea of red threads surged behind him, giving a close chase. As Su Ming moved forward, he made his voice reverberate in all directions. Qian Lin, Long Li, Sun Kuan, if the three of you are still alive, then hold back the true guard with all your strength. Let out your presence and let me know where you are. I have a red thread wave behind me. Jing Nanzi, who was in an empty space in the sealed region where there were many tunnels and who was dressed in red armor and a red helmet, threw the long red spear in his hand outwards. Immediately, all the diamond-shaped scales at the center of Long Li's brows crumbled. He coughed up blood, and as his body fell backwards, he crashed into the stone wall behind him. Sun Kuan was lying by the side at that moment with blood trickling out of the corners of his mouth. He had a dull look on his face, and his chest was a bloody mess. It was as if his heart had been dug out by someone. There was also a big tree on the empty ground. As its branches spread out, they completely sealed off all the tunnels that served as exits. There were also huge branches that were swiftly cracking towards Jing Nanzi like a whip. The three of you can be considered as outstanding people in the initial stage of World Plane Realm, especially you, descendant of the Qian family who I did not kill all those years ago. I didn't expect that you would be able to reach World Plane Realm as well. Looks like it was the correct choice to spare your life all those years ago. After all, your family has the rare constitution that can fuse together with plants. You've kept this sal tree in good shape, Jing Nanzi said flatly while looking coldly at the big tree that was Qian Lin. Jing Nanzi, even if I die today, I will make you pay. Qian Lin's face appeared on the tree. His heart was filled with frustration. This was not part of his plan. Everything should not have happened this way. Beside them, the alien race's Duke of Crimson Flame should also be fighting against Jing Nanzi. Only then could they kill Jing Nanzi, and only then would Qianlin be able to exact his revenge. However, this current state of affairs was completely different from his plans. This frustrated Qianlin, and also brought out a sense of regret, since this whole thing had went into an absurd direction. I've made preparations for so many years while looking for a chance. After great difficulty, it finally came, but because I fell unconscious, Yi Shentong woke up, and he summoned Jing Nanzi based on the thought I planted in him. The timing wasn't right. Could it be that even the heavens are in favor of Jing Nanzi so that he could avoid this disaster? Qianlin descended into a state of madness and had the whip before him crack in the air. Bang! 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 Jing Nanzi swung the long spear in his hands before he thrust it forward. With a bang, the air around him distorted and fell apart. Numerous cracks appeared on the big tree that was Qianlin, and many parts of his tree body crumbled to pieces. It was when Qianlin had already returned to his human form and was staggering backwards that Su Ming's voice reached this area. When Qianlin heard the words, his eyes immediately turned bloodshot. As he let out his presence, he charged towards Jing Nanzi. Long Li struggled to his feet. As blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth, powerful hate appeared in his dull eyes. He was only one step away from obtaining the World Stone, but his actions had been cut off by the sudden appearance of this true guard, causing him to be one step short of success. He was also in a life-and-death crisis at the moment. The opponent's strength, the difference of an entire level between them, and the advantage of being able to use the power of world planes without having to worry about expenditure made it so that he was only able to fend death with much difficulty. And that was only because Long Li had already reached the pinnacle of the initial stage in World Plane Realm, was only half a step away from reaching the middle stage. Besides that, Qianlin had his nascent divinity change places with his physical body, so he could bring out power that was slightly greater than what Long Li could, though it still had yet to reach the middle stage. Sun Kuan's various enchanted treasures had also extended this fight to his point in time. I'll fight to the bitter end. If I don't, I'll die. Long Li howled. He lifted his right hand and tapped a few spots on his chest, and the power of a world plane erupted swiftly from his body. At the same time, a black horn crawled out of the top of his skull. A large amount of scales also appeared on the skin of his face. In the blink of an eye, Long Li turned into a human-shaped beast, and as he roared, he charged towards Jing Nanzi. In the distance, Sun Kuan bit the tip of his tongue. A large amount of red appeared in his eyes, and he let out a shrill cry as his dwarfish body trembled. His voice contained a shocking penetrative power. When he cried out, his body trembled violently and swiftly withered away, as if all his life force and essence had turned into nourishment for that piercing cry. The moment the piercing cry reached Jing Nanzi, he froze for a moment in midair. The roar echoed in his head, and it felt as if a sharp needle had stabbed his mind before it turning into a loud buzz in his ears. It was at this moment that Long Li swiped Jing Nanzi's chest with the claw of his half-human, half-beast body. Qianlin closed in with a hideous expression. Branches drew out of his fingertips and crawled into Jing Nanzi's body like drills. At that instant, a buzzing sound sliced through the air from one of the tunnels in the beehive. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming rushed out of the tunnel by the side. He had come to this place by rushing towards the familiar presences. This was the first time since they had parted ways that they had gathered together once more. However, they did not have time for a nice chit-chat. Right after Su Ming flew out, the tunnel behind him let out a bang, and the red thread wave burst out from the tunnel like the eruption from a volcano. I know the way to the place sealing the Duke of Crimson Flame. Take me with you, I'll guide you there. Sun Kuan was the first to speak up in a shrill voice. Almost at the instant he said these words, Su Ming closed in on him and grabbed his body before he charged towards the tunnel right before him. Qianlin and Long Li followed right after him without any hesitation or regard for their own injuries. As for Jing Nanzi, he was first stabbed in the mind by Sun Kuan's strange voice, then struck by Long Li's desperate attack and Qianlin's crazed assault, but his level of cultivation was high, and he quickly recovered. Before the red threads could pounce on him, he charged after Su Ming and the others. However, the instant he was about to move, Su Ming turned around and stepped into the cave before throwing out an item from his right hand. 8 colors roamed about in the air. They naturally came from Su Ming's 8-colored crystal. The moment it appeared, it shattered with a bang and formed a power that could freeze souls, freezing Jing Nanzi's body for a moment. The price for that momentary pause was being submerged by the boundless wave of the red threads. Chapter 779. The Fifth Abyss Pact. However, it did not matter whether it was Su Ming or the others. All of them knew clearly that if even they had a way to dodge those red threads or escape from them, then the true guard who was stronger than they were and who had already reached the middle stage of World Plane Realm would definitely be able to escape. They would only be able to trap him for a moment. The true guard would definitely be able to rush out and chase after them soon enough. Time was precious for them at that moment. They could not afford to waste even a single instant. To protect his life, Sun Quan quickly told Su Ming everything about the path he had found as the other charged forward while holding him. With Sun Quan guiding the way because he had gone to the core of the seal before, Su Ming moved through the tunnels in the beehive at full speed. Long Li and Tian Lin were heavily wounded, but they gritted their teeth and followed closely behind. After all, if they could not catch up and were left behind, they would end up dead once Jing Nanzi caught up to them. The span of time it takes for an incense stick to burn quickly passed. As Su Ming was quickly moving through the tunnels with Sun Quan in hand, a muffled boom reached. Jing Nanzi's domineering pressure spread out with a bang from a spot far away. Su Ming's expression changed slightly. He became even faster. Long Li and Tian Lin's expressions turned even darker and paler. They knew that Jing Nanzi had already gotten out of being trapped by the red threads, and it was most likely that he was already closing in on them. The core is right before us. It's less than 5,000 feet to that place if we move along this tunnel. Sun Quan's face was void of blood. As he quickly spoke with a sharp voice, Su Ming traveled forward as if he had turned into a gust of wind. Whoosh! Su Ming looked as if he had closed that distance of 5,000 feet by warping, but in truth, he had simply used that extreme speed of his and shot through the air. Once he rushed over, he appeared in an incredibly large and spacious cast cave. This place was about several hundreds of thousands of feet in size. There was a pool of purplish-black magma at the center, and submerged in that magma was a skeleton with 3 swords pierced through its skeletal frame. The moment Su Ming arrived, a wave of suffocating heat crashed into his face. Once he breathed it in, he felt as if his entire body was about to burst into flames. Su Ming stood in midair and swept his gaze through the area. When his eyes fell on the skeleton in the purplish-black lava, Long Li and Tian Lin also rushed out of the tunnel behind him in the form of long arcs. They stood beside Su Ming, and once they saw everything around them, they sucked in a sharp breath. Duke of Crimson Flame. That skeleton is definitely the Duke of Crimson Flame, the mighty cultivator from the alien race who has been sealed here for years. While Long Li and Tian Lin were looking at the skeleton in the purplish-black magma, Su Ming's pupils constricted and his heart trembled. Ever since he had come to this sealed region, he had sensed a pair of eyes watching him. At the instant he looked towards the skeleton and met its gaze, that feeling as if he was being watched appeared once again. That feeling was incredibly strong, so strong in fact that Su Ming could tell that the pair of eyes that had been watching him outside belonged to this skeleton. This pair of eyes that met Su Ming's gaze seemed to possess a vast amount of life force, which caused his heart to shiver, and at the same time, it also made him feel as if he was seeing multiple illusions. Tian Lin seized his chest. Blood trickled out of his mouth, then said urgently, "We have to break open all the seals in the mighty cultivator's body. This is the only way we can fight against Jing Nanzi." Su Ming released Sun Quan from his grasp. At that moment, the power of the world plane here had restored some of his cultivation base, and he said anxiously, "But how do we open all the seals in the mighty cultivator's body?" "I know. We just need to take away the world stone, and the seal here will lose its balance. Then, it'll completely shatter. It's a pity that before I could retrieve the world stone, I was heavily wounded by the true guard, or else the seal would have shattered a long time ago. I remember where the world stone is, but I'll need time. If you can hold back Jing Nanzi for some time, then I'm 7/10 certain that I'll be able to shatter the seal." Long Li panted harshly as he spoke in a hoarse voice. "Do you mean it when you say that you are 7/10 certain?" Lin gritted his teeth and whipped his head around to look at Long Li. Even Sun Quan and Su Ming looked towards him in silence. Long Li sucked in a deep breath and declared in a low voice, "Things have already progressed to this point. Why would I speak carelessly now? If we don't kill the true guard Jing Nanzi, then we will all die here. I meant what I said before. All right. Brother Su, Brother Sun, we are all people Jing Nanzi wants to kill. Not a single one of us will be able to escape alone, but I swear that if we do manage to kill Jing Nanzi, then everything on his person will belong to all of you. I will want none of it." While Lin spoke, Jing Nanzi's low roar came from a tunnel on the side. Judging by the location from where the voice came, he should not be too far away from them. Su Ming's expression was solemn. There was no longer any other method at that moment. This was the only way. He nodded. As Sun Quan laughed bitterly, he quickly brought out some medicinal cores and placed them in his mouth, seizing every moment that he had to exercise his breathing. "Brother Long, when Jing Nanzi appears later, we will risk our lives to stop him, but you must hurry. We can only buy you the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn. This is our limit. If you don't succeed by then." Lin stopped speaking. Long Li sucked in a deep breath and said in a somber voice, "This amount of time is enough. If I still don't manage to succeed, then it can only be that the heavens want us to die." Su Ming's heart trembled. He immediately took a few steps backwards, and a loud bang came from the tunnel in the distance. Countless shattered rocks shot out as that bang reverberated in the air. As they charged towards Su Ming and the others, a frightful presence surged forth to devour them like an ancient ferocious beast that had its mouth wide open to eat its prey. Lin's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and turned into a big tree. As its branches danced in the air wildly, an endless amount of shadows manifested to charge forward, filling the air and earth. By the side, Sun Quan bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a blood arrow. At the same time, a part of his blood turned into a blood-colored runic symbol in mid-air. A thick, bloody stench spread out, and there was a layer of blood fog circling around the symbol. As it rushed forward, Sun Quan let out a sharp whistle. His dwarfish body shuddered, and a large number of small objects were shaken out from all over his body. Among these small objects were jade pendants, crystal pearls, and several emerald-colored plates. There were even some wooden objects with carvings on them. There were hundreds of these items that fell off Sun Quan's body, and once he flung them out, they turned into hundreds of long arcs that charged forward. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. As he moved backwards, he lifted his right hand, and the killing sword appeared on his palm. His eyes burned brightly as he circulated his cultivation base. A tremendous amount of physical power erupted forth. He turned into a sword light and rushed forward. Once the 3 of them attacked simultaneously to resist the murderous presence in the red light, Long Li moved back, then dove into one of the tunnels in the beehive to rush towards the spot where the secondary core was located. "You managed to make me release the first of my self-imposed seals. You should be proud of yourselves, ants." A cold voice filled with a chilling tone reached the group as they attacked at the same time. Soon after, 3 bloody shadows charged towards Su Ming and the other 2 from the red light. Thump, thump, thump. Lin was at the front of the group. When he was touched by the red shadow, he coughed up blood. Half of his body, which had taken the form of a big tree, shattered before he turned into his nascent divinity and fell backwards. The sword in Su Ming's hand swept against the red shadow, from which a vast power spread out. It contained a destructive presence, and just as it was about to rush into Su Ming's body, the light from the 5-direction seal instantly spread out. As it resisted the destructive power, the ordinary robe on Su Ming's body shuddered and turned into the sacred constellation robe to fight against that destructive power. These 2 supreme treasures, as well as Su Ming's own physical power, allowed him to maintain his balance even as he coughed up blood and retreated. He swung his arm, and his statue of the god of berserkers appeared for the first time in the barren lands of divine essence. It lifted its fist and hurled a punch towards that red shadow. At the instant Sun Quan came into contact with the red shadow, he spared no pains to have all the enchanted treasures on his person explode to fight against the ripples spreading out from the red runic symbol. Signs of destruction appeared in the air around him. He swiftly made a move to retreat, but at the moment he began moving backwards, a long red spear shot through the air with a hum and appeared right before him. Right when Sun Kuan's pupils shrank, that long spear pierced the center of his brows, going right through. Sun Kuan trembled, and his body instantly began withering away, as if all his flesh and blood were being absorbed by the long spear. In the span of 2 breaths, he turned into a mummy. The red shadows before Su Ming and Qian Lin disappeared. Jing Nanzi, who was dressed in red armor, walked out of the air before Sun Kuan and grabbed the long spear. He pulled it out slowly from Other's head, then looked at Su Ming and Qian Lin. One of you is a rat I didn't kill in the past because I was merciful, and one of you is an unforgivable person who dared to kill my clone. How do you want to die? I'll let the 2 of you choose yourselves, Jing Nanzi said in a ghastly voice while holding onto the long red spear. There were red threads spinning around his weapon, and they were crawling into his arm. Those red threads were bloodlines that had originally been Sun Kuan's flesh, blood, and essence. Once they entered Jing Nanzi's body, his presence increased at a shocking pace. The few injuries he had suffered just now recovered completely. When his gaze swept past Su Ming's statue of the god of berserkers, his pupils shrank, though it was barely noticeable. Clearly, this was something he had never seen before. However, there were far too many criminals in the barren lands of divine essence, and there were endless divine abilities, which was why he only looked at it for a short moment. Su Ming's expression was grim. He leaped up to stand on his statue's shoulder, staring down at Jing Nanzi. His grip on the killing sword tightened. Suddenly, a weak voice spoke up, its words reaching Su Ming's ears. "Fellow ally from the Sacred Abyss Builders, do you remember the 5th Abyss Pact? I am the Duke of Crimson Flame of the Surging Indulgers. I am willing to comply to the 5th Abyss Pact. I just hope that you will resurrect the millions of my people who died in battle, leaving behind their Abyss soul flags." That voice reverberated in the air, but Qian Lin and Jing Nanzi did not notice it, a telling sign that the words were spoken solely for Su Ming. Chapter 780. The Illusion Shattered. Su Ming was momentarily stunned. That voice was faint, but it had managed to enter his mind. The voice claiming himself to be the Duke of Crimson Flame shocked Su Ming. "Fellow ally from the Sacred Abyss Builders, don't panic. You are the only one who can hear my voice. We can talk about the 5th Abyss Pact later. Now, I will help you through this difficulty. The power of the seal still remains, and I don't have an ounce of power in my body, neither can I move. Come to me. Come to my side. Only then will I be able to ensure your safety." The faint voice continued to echo in Su Ming's ears. A barely noticeable glint appeared in his eyes. He did not turn his head back to look at the skeleton in the purplish-black magma. Qian Lin wiped away the blood at the corners of his lips and began to laugh loudly. As he laughed, a hint of madness and grief revealed themselves in his voice. It sounded as if he had suppressed the grief in his heart for thousands of years, and right then, it exploded from his heart. "You're asking me to choose how I want to die. Then I choose to die with you." Qian Lin lifted his right hand pushed against his chest. Su Ming saw Qian Lin's physical body, which was inside his nascent divinity, instantly turn to pieces. This meant that he had completely abandoned his physical body. At that moment, he only had his nascent divinity left. However, he could not last in this state. This body made purely from his nascent divinity was not what he had obtained by refining his body. Qian Lin had instead obtained it by executing the art to have his nascent divinity change places with his physical body. He might have become much stronger because of it, but it was the same as burning his own potential to stimulate his soul so that he could make himself invigorated before his death. It would not last long, and due to his lack of a physical body as a support, Qian Lin's nascent divinity would surely scatter away in no time. He had chosen to die. This was his choice. If he had to die, he would do it by setting himself on fire. If he had to die, he would die, while battling against his mortal enemy, Jing Nanzi. Ancestors of the Qian family, your descendant, Qian Lin, is an unfilial son. Today, I will use my death to take revenge. Please protect me, O ancestors in heaven, so that I can kill this person. An indomitable presence erupted forth from Qian Lin's body. His nascent divinity's appearance swiftly turned brown, the shade of tree bark. In the blink of an eye, His body also looked as if it had turned into a human-shaped tree. A large number of branches crawled out of his index finger, and his body filled with the power of plants. He fused his nascent divinity together with his tree. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He could tell what had happened to Qianlin and the madness he had descended into. This was the strongest power he could muster in his life after he no longer cared about death and after he had placed one of his feet into his own coffin. Jing Nanzi was in midair. As he held onto the long red spear, his pupils shrank slightly. A bloodthirsty fighting spirit appeared in his eyes, and a smile touched his lips under the helmet. I spared you in the past because I noticed that your blood was the thickest among the Qian family. You had practically reverted to your roots. Jing Nanzi swept the long spear in his right hand forward. Boom! 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 The air before Jing Nanzi shattered. As the destruction spread, whatever was destroyed turned into an invisible storm. It caused the space to distort before it crashed straight into Qianlin. He let out a loud roar. His cultivation base started boiling as if it had been set on fire. His speed increased by several fold, and the pressure he exuded could even rival Jing Nanzi's. Bang! 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 These two people exchanged blows several times in midair. Every single time they attacked each other, Qianlin's body would shake so much that rumbling sounds would resonate in the air, and a number of places on his body would be torn to pieces. However, those spots quickly recovered. After all, his nascent divinity had already fused with the tree. A tree was usually incredibly tenacious, and its life force was also extremely great. Because of it, even if Qianlin was injured, he was able to instantly return to his peak condition. With his strength of someone who had attained great completion in the initial stage of World Plane Realm, he could bring forth a terrifying might that was equivalent to those in the middle stage of that realm once he fused with the tree, and he actually managed to fight on equal grounds against Jing Nanzi. At the instant another round of violent tremors spread through the area, Jing Nanzi held the long spear in his hand and laughed loudly with his head thrown back. Very good, Qian family's child. Indeed, you didn't disappoint me. The Qian family has a great reputation in true sacred Yin world. If your ancestors had not rebelled and failed, this branch of the Qian family which you belong to wouldn't have been imprisoned in the barren lands of divine essence, either. Brilliant light shone in Jing Nanzi's eyes. As he spoke in a ghastly voice, he turned into a long arc and appeared right in front of Qianlin. Boom! The space between them shattered. A powerful wave of impact swept through the area and stirred up a loud rumble that spread through all directions. Qianlin's face was dark. He did not say a single word. Clearly, what Jing Nanzi had said was not a secret to him. He rushed forward and fought against the true guard again. Su Ming stood on the statue of the god of berserkers, the wave of impact that swept backwards having blown his hair upwards. He had tightened his grip around the killing sword before, but now he loosened it as his eyes shone brightly. He did not rush into the battlefield, but he did not retreat to the Duke of Crimson Flame's side, like the skeleton had asked him to do. Unless he absolutely had to, Su Ming would not choose to use the method the Duke of Crimson Flame had offered to him. After all, people were vicious and malicious. If he was careless, he would be doomed eternally. Su Ming stood on the statue calmly, holding the killing sword in his hand. The image of the sun gradually appeared in his left eye, and in his right was a bright crescent moon, making his eyes appear cloudy. At the same time, a star appeared in Su Ming's heart. Illusion of star, sun, and moon. Right then, Su Ming cast this illusory art against Jing Nanzi as he was fighting fiercely against Qianlin. This illusion was something that others could not fend against, and the slightest carelessness would cause them to immediately sink into the illusion. Jing Nanzi's heart suddenly shuddered as he was fighting against Qianlin, as if his heart was giving him a warning that an incredible danger was about to descend upon his head. His eyes began to shine, but before he could check the source of this danger, Jing Nanzi! Su Ming let out a loud shout and jumped off his statue of the god of berserkers. His voice was like thunder, and it had even fused with his god of berserkers' roar, causing an unceasing amount of echoes to stir up in this cast cave, where the space was limited. Jing Nanzi! Jing Nanzi! Jing Nanzi! These echoes filled the air, and in the blink of an eye, they fused together, turning into a roar that sounded like the might of heavens. Jing! Nan Zi. That roar caused Qianlin's ears to ring and shook Jing Nanzi's heart so violently that his mind became empty for a split second due to his carelessness. It was as if his soul had been called, forcing him to instinctively look toward Su Ming, who had been the one to produce that sound. What he saw was not Su Ming's face, but the light from the sun and the moon. At the instant he saw them, he felt as if he had turned into a star. A bang immediately resounded in his head. When his vision cleared, he saw a brilliant smile, a gentle gaze, and a hand that was stretched towards him. The palm lines on that hand were coarse, but they gave the hand a feeling of warmth and solidness on which others could rely. Big brother. Jing Nanzi was stunned. He looked at the young man who seemed to be in his 20s and was strongly built. There was a great sword strapped to his back. At that moment, he had his right hand extended towards Jing Nanzi. Brother, why are you crying when your big brother is around? Train properly, and in the future, let's explore the galaxy together. Jing Nanzi saw himself as well. He was a boy of about 12 or 13 years of age. He had short hair and was thin. At that moment, he was crying. He remembered it. This was something from many years ago, and it was the most precious memory in his mind, the memory related to his older brother. However, it was also the memory he did not want to recall the most. Yet now, it had surfaced before his eyes, looking incredibly real. A man has to be straightforward and upstanding. Brother, you're very gloomy, and this is something I don't like. But I'm with you. One of these days, I'll have your personality fixed. Jing Nanzi's ears echoed with his older brother's voice. The scene before his eyes changed. He saw himself grown up, but the gloomy look on his face was even more prominent, and it was difficult for it to disappear. Only when he was before his brother would that gloomy expression turn into a bright smile. I'm his older brother. I will pay with my life for the mistake he made. When Jing Nanzi saw what event from his memory was, the smile on his face froze, then turned into grief and rage. This was the turning point in his life. It was the memory that had changed his life and was something he would never forget even if he died. Because at that time, he had lost his older brother. He saw himself kneeling on the ground while trembling. He saw his older brother standing before him with the great sword in hand. He saw an old man in front of them. That old man was looking at his older brother with an aloof expression on his face. Behind that old man was a girl with an even more aloof face. She was looking at Jing Nanzi in disgust. I, Chen Jing, am his older brother. He's still young, I'll die for him. Jing Nanzi saw his older brother turn his head back and flashing a gentle smile at him. As he smiled, Jing Nanzi saw his older brother lift the sword in his head and stab his neck. As blood poured out, Jing Nanzi roared madly. Since your older brother has died for your crimes, I'll overlook this. Jing Nanzi shuddered. He let out a shrill roar, unable to control himself. This was the most painful memory in his head. He did not want to remember it. He wanted to bury this in the deep recesses of his mind, but now, it had surfaced, forcing him to watch it again. He saw himself kneeling beside his older brother's corpse long after the old man and the girl had left. After remaining silent for a few days, his hair turned red, and a heinous aura of murderousness filled his body. His eyes became void of emotions, the only thing remaining in them being bloodlust with a touch of madness to it. He saw himself holding his older brother's corpse, and eating him. He had even crushed his older brother's bones in his mouth. As his mouth filled with blood, he devoured his older brother. Big brother, I'll be with you. I am you. From now on, I am no longer Chen Nan. My name will be Jing Nan. As Jing Nanzi laughed brokenly, endless pain traversed through his body. That pain came from both his physical body and his soul. The intenseness of it all shattered the memory before him. When everything cleared up, he found himself still in the cast cave, and right before him was Qianlin attacking him continuously with all his strength. By the looks of it, the bloody taste in his mouth earlier had been due to Qianlin's attacks.